My deskmate handed me a throat lozenge, and I immediately dissolved it into the top scholar's porridge in the cafeteria, letting 4,000 students share it, all because I had been reborn. In my previous life, my deskmate had bound a plundering system. Whenever I ate something from her, my exam scores would automatically transfer to her. She was a rich second-generation heiress who had already arranged to study abroad. Stealing my college entrance exam results was just a prank to her. But I was a student from a poor family, and the college entrance exam was my only chance to change my fate. My scores in the 3 mock exams kept getting worse, yet I couldn't figure out why. Finally, I failed the college entrance exam and was hit and killed on the road, utterly devastated. After death, my spirit drifted in midair, overhearing my deskmate and her best friend chatting and laughing. I never expected Sue to actually get first place in the entire city. Now, that title is mine. Someone as poor and shabby as her only deserves to lie in the mud for the rest of her life, given a second chance at life. Isn't she fond of stealing other scores for fun? It would be so dull to only steal mine. This time, the entire school's college entrance exam scores will be her surprise. 1. The day before the 3rd mock exam of senior year, I came down with a high fever due to consecutive days of overexertion. I was lying on the desk, dizzy and feeling cold all over, when suddenly a box of cold medicine was handed to me. Shan, take the cold medicine quickly. I was taken aback, looked up, and met Gu Ying's eyes. In my previous life, she used this box of cold medicine to exchange for my top college entrance exam score in the city. I instinctively wanted to push away, but my classmates gathered around. The young lady is truly beautiful and kind-hearted, even preparing cold medicine for her deskmate. That's right, for a poor student like Tom Shan, who can't afford to go to the hospital and has no one to take care of her when she's sick. It's fortunate that she sits next to the young lady and receives such care. Hearing these words, Gu Ying's smile grew even brighter as she tore open the cold medicine packaging. Hurry up and eat it. This is a special medicine my dad brought back from abroad. You can't get it here in the country. I remember it was right before the 3rd mock exam when I took the cold medicine she gave me, and it changed my life forever. I came from a poor family and could only attend this key high school with the help of a scholarship. The college entrance exam was the only way for someone like me from the bottom of society to grasp the rope of fate. Before my senior year of high school, my grades consistently ranked in the top 3 of my grade, and I had high hopes of getting into Tsinghua or Peking University. I worked day and night, not daring to slack off in the slightest, hoping for an acceptance letter this summer that would change my fate. But starting from the 3rd mock exam, my grades plummeted drastically. The final college entrance exam became my eternal nightmare. On the day the scores were released, the glaring over 300 points on the screen felt like a poisoned scalpel, piercing straight into my heart. I frantically applied for a re-evaluation of my exam papers. The results, however, showed that those absurd mistakes were indeed written by my own hand. Even more terrifying was the clear surveillance footage from the exam hall, which showed that during the math test, I had left after only half an hour. But I clearly remember, I answered every question carefully and checked until the very last second. The proctor and the students around me all said in unison that they saw me hand in the paper early. There was a terrifying disconnect between my memory and reality. I refused to accept it and repeatedly appealed, demanding an investigation. Time and time again, the results remained unchanged. Gradually, the teacher's eyes showed pity, and the police officer's tone carried helplessness. They began to hint that perhaps I was under too much pressure and had developed mental issues. It wasn't until after I died that I learned all of this was done by my deskmate's grade-stealing system. Thinking of my grades, I coldly pushed the cold medicine away. I've already taken medicine. Taking another one now might cause a conflict in effects. As soon as the words were spoken, Gu Ying's best friend Liu burst out laughing. Top student, is it really that serious? Ying prepared this cold medicine especially for you because she saw you were sick with no one to take care of you. Will taking it really delay your chances of getting into Tsinghua or Peking University? The sarcasm in her tone was too obvious, and the people around also started laughing. Attention, everyone, experts say that taking cold medicine will delay your child's chances of getting into Tsinghua or Peking University. Stop pretending. She can't even afford to go to the hospital. Where would she get the money to buy cold medicine? I think it's clearly a case of a poor student being jealous of the rich young lady and feeling inferior. Gu Ying did not stop these classmates from mocking me. Still smiling, she pretended to be magnanimous and shoved the cold medicine into my hand. All right, Shan, tomorrow is the mock exam for senior year of high school. You should take your medicine quickly. Looking at the cold medicine in my hand, a wave of disgust surged within me. It's not yet time for the college entrance exam, so I can't afford to break ties with her openly. After all, the enemy is in the open while I'm in the shadows. If I expose her now, Who knows what underhanded tricks she might still have up her sleeve to use against me before the college entrance exam. I couldn't help but clench my fist, resisting the urge to throw the cold medicine out the window. Suddenly, a flash of red caught my eye from downstairs. I turned my head and looked closely. It was a banner from the school encouraging the college entrance exam students. Thousands of troops and horses march on the journey. A single paper determines the future. A bold idea suddenly popped into my mind. If all these thousands of troops were to eat what Going offered, would their college entrance exam scores be stolen as well? Chapter 2. Thinking of this, I held the cold medicine in my hands. Thank you, Ying, but my throat is sore and I feel a bit nauseous right now. I really can't eat anything, but since it's your kind gesture, of course I can't let it go to waste. As I spoke, I turned to look at Chin Man, who had also caught a cold like me. Chin Man, do you want some? This is the cold medicine Going brought back from abroad. They say it's especially effective. Chin Man's father is the grade-level director, and her grades have always been the top in our entire school. Moreover, most of her family members are involved in politics, with a very solid background. Chin Man glanced at the cold medicine's outer packaging and was about to reach out to take it. Going suddenly shouted loudly, "No!" Her voice suddenly rose sharply, startling everyone present. Going, meeting my shocked and puzzled gaze, quickly explained, "Shanshan, Chin Man seems to be prone to allergies. What if she takes this and has an allergic reaction?" Chin Man leaned over to look at the ingredients of the cold medicine. "It's fine. I'm allergic to penicillin. And this medicine doesn't contain any." A trace of nervousness appeared on Gu Ying's face, but Liu Yao snatched the cold medicine away and said angrily, "This was specially saved for you by Ying. If you don't want to take it, that's one thing, but how can you just give it to someone else?" Her words were not at all polite, and Chin Man's face immediately darkened as she turned and walked away. I had already gotten the answer I wanted. It seems that the things Gu Ying gives, if given to others to eat, will also have their achievements taken away. In that case, I'll play a big game with you. What's the point of just my college entrance exam results? Only by giving her the entire school's college entrance exam results would it be worthy of the game she so carefully prepared. I made up my mind and was about to take back that box of cold medicine, but Gu Ying, afraid that I would share the medicine with others, took another piece of candy out of her pocket. "Shanshan, if you're worried about the medicine clashing, don't take it. I still have some throat lozenges here. Have these instead." Those around them were deeply moved by her thoughtful gesture. Gu Ying really knows how to take care of others. She's so well prepared for her deskmate. Such a wonderful deskmate. Tong Shanshan is truly blessed to have someone as good as Gu Ying by her side. Gu Ying was amused. "I just thought that having a cold must be really uncomfortable, and if it doesn't get better, it could affect your exam performance. Tong Shan is the pride of our entire class, so of course I need to prepare more for her." I looked at her hypocritical smile and recalled the conversation between Gu Ying and Liu Yao that I accidentally overheard after my death in my previous life. Liu Yao was envious that she had become the top scorer in the city. Gu Ying then smiled and waved her hand dismissively. "I'm going abroad anyway, so I don't really care about the results. Being the top scorer just sounds nice, but it's useless. I just wanted to mess with that poor girl for fun, who told her to always act so studious. It's annoying to look at. Now it's settled. Let's see how she can keep pretending. Trash belongs in the trash. After all, I was so angry I laughed. Did you go through all this trouble just to mess with me?" This time, I didn't make any excuses. After accepting the throat lozenges, I casually stuffed them into my pocket. However, Gu Ying seemed displeased with my actions and frowned as she asked me, "Shanshan, isn't your throat bothering you? Why aren't you eating?" Chapter 3. I yawned. "I'm a bit sleepy. I want to rest for a while and eat later." Gu Ying became anxious. "It's just a piece of candy. It's really too small. If I put it in my pocket, she wouldn't be able to tell whether I actually ate it or not." "Your voice is already hoarse. You should just eat the throat lozenge. Besides, since you have a cold, you actually need to consume a bit more sugar. What if you faint during class later?" She frowned, as if she were genuinely worried about me. Those around her clearly believed her concerns. Whispers came from the back row. "It's just a piece of candy. You'd think it would kill her to eat it. I think she's just being mean-spirited and doesn't want to accept someone else's kindness. You're given face but don't want it when someone treats you well. Even though you're a student from a poor family, you still don't know how to cherish it." These words pierced my heart like needles. Does giving me a few candies count as treating me well? Am I supposed to wag my tail at her and eat them with gratitude? Can the gap between a student from a poor family and a rich second generation really be their reason for morally ing me here without knowing the truth? My fingertips trembled slightly, yet I still forced myself to maintain a calm facade. Liu Yao chimed in to play the bad cop. You won't take the cold medicine, and you won't even have a throat lozenge. Do you have a problem with Guiying? Are you deliberately bullying her? Her attitude was particularly aggressive, and even the surrounding classmates became hostile toward me because of this incident. After weighing the options silently in my heart, I obediently took out the candy, unwrapped it, and ate it. A refreshing coolness immediately spread through my mouth, with the spicy kick of mint stimulating my taste buds. Seeing this, Guiying's smile grew even brighter. That's more like it. Are you feeling a little better now? I also tugged at the corner of my lips. Thank you. I really do feel much better in my throat. After watching me swallow the candy, Guiying finally left contentedly, and I pretended to lie down and sleep, then carefully felt my pocket. In my pocket was exactly the throat lozenge that Guiying had given me earlier, to soothe my throat a bit. I had also prepared some cheap and refreshing throat lozenges. Fortunately, the school store only carried this one type of throat lozenge. Otherwise, just by looking at the packaging, I would have been exposed. Taking advantage of a trip to the restroom, I hid that special throat lozenge before returning to the classroom building. As soon as I entered the classroom, I saw Guiying sitting in my seat. The empty throat lozenge tin that I had originally kept in my desk was now placed on my table. My heart skipped a beat. Lu Yao looked up and saw me standing at the back door, immediately giving Guiying a meaningful glance. Guiying turned around, her face terrifyingly gloomy, and stared at me as she asked, Shanshan, did you buy this throat lozenge a long time ago? Chapter 4, my heart tightened, and I slowly walked over, but my mind was racing rapidly. Why did Guiying suddenly go through my desk? Before I could say anything, Lu Yao suddenly stumbled, and the water in her cup splashed precisely onto my jacket. Guiying quickly stood up and grabbed some tissues to wipe my clothes. Oh, Yao, why aren't you more careful? What if our top student catches a cold? Hurry up and check. Shanshan, is there anything in your clothes pockets that isn't waterproof? I was amused by her undisguised intention. With a stern face, I turned out both pockets of my jacket as she wished. There was only a palm-sized vocabulary notebook that I always carry with me. Guiying looked at me suspiciously, but couldn't find anything wrong, so she had to let it go. I shook my coat and had just sat down when Guiying came close to me again, testing the waters. Shanshan, why didn't you tell me earlier that you bought throat lozenges yourself? I even specially brought some for you. I looked at her with a completely calm expression, because I had already finished my throat lozenges earlier, and besides, I didn't want to turn down your kindness. I looked at Guiying with a face full of gratitude. Only then did Guiying's expression finally soften a little. Afterward, using the excuse that Lu Yao had accidentally splashed water all over me and wanting to express her apology, she bought me 2 boxes of throat lozenges for me to have on hand just in case. I bought new throat lozenges from the small shop and secretly replaced the ones in the desk. Then, I took the 2 boxes of throat lozenges that Guiying had given me back to the dormitory and hid them away. With over 4,000 students in the school, of course I needed to stock up more to ensure everyone could share in Guiying's kindness. If there's not enough sugar, the dosage might be insufficient, and it wouldn't be good to affect my good deskmates' college entrance exam results. The next day was the 3rd mock exam. I entered the exam hall and quietly completed the test paper. When handing in the paper, I passed by Guiying's exam seat. She gave me a mocking smile, as if saying to me, your score is within my grasp, your efforts are worthless. I smiled and nodded at her as well, then walked up to the podium to hand in my exam paper. A few days later, the results of the 3rd mock exam were released. The total scores and rankings of the students in each class were posted at the entrance of every classroom. Even before I approached the results board, I could sense the unusual looks from my classmates. Mockery and gossip drifted into my ears. How come Tom Shan's recent mock exams have all turned out like this? Could it be that she was cheating all along? I think it's a mental issue. She's just cracking under the pressure as the college entrance exam approaches. I looked at the grade list, carefully examining it, and only then did I realize that I, who had always been in the top 3 of the entire school, had unexpectedly ranked over 800th in the school. Biting my lip, I squeezed out of the crowd with a look of unbearable humiliation and ran back to the classroom. Not long after, Guiying also returned, her face equally pale. She rushed straight to my seat and loudly questioned me. Tom Shan, what was your ranking this time? Chapter 5. I gathered my emotions, turned to look at her, my eyes red. Ying, I failed the exam. I had a cold during the test and filled in the wrong answer sheet. As I spoke, I ended up lying on the table and crying. The classmate next to me whispered to Guiying, Tom Shan didn't do well this time, only ranking over 800. Similar to you. Guiying was stunned. I held back the laughter in my heart. Although I didn't eat Guiying's throat lozenges, to avoid her discovering the truth, I deliberately filled in the wrong answers on the answer sheet and left a large section of questions blank. Therefore, my actual ranking was over 800, and Guiying's ranking was also over 800, with both of us having equally poor results. It naturally covered up the failure of the plunder system. Finally, Goyen's hand landed on my shoulder. Patting it a bit stiffly, "It's okay, Shanshan, don't be discouraged. Failing an exam because of a cold is no big deal. Just rest well before the college entrance exam, and I'm sure you'll do great." I breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that she believed it. I carelessly wiped my tears with my sleeve, pretending not to notice the unintentional disgust in Goyen's eyes. "Thank you, Ying, even though you didn't do well yourself. You still came to comfort me." Goyen's smile stiffened, and she nodded perfunctorily before falling silent. In the final days leading up to the college entrance exam, to ensure the grade stealing system would take effect, she started bringing me different tonics every day. Sometimes it's imported fruit, sometimes it's beautifully packaged energy bars. I accept them all every time. Meanwhile, to boost the morale of the exam takers, the school provides free Zhuanyuan porridge every morning. I work part-time in the cafeteria, and now it's come in handy. When I arrived at the cafeteria, the aunties were busy around the stove, and the freshly cooked Zhuanyuan porridge was still steaming. "Auntie, let me serve this porridge." I took the long-handled ladle and pulled out the small paper packet hidden in my sleeve. Inside was the powdered throat lozenge that I had ground in advance, given to me by Guying. I held the spoon and slowly stirred it in the porridge pot, tilting my wrist slightly. The powdered sugar in the paper packet then trickled along the edge of the spoon, gradually dissolving into the hot porridge. It was instantly dispersed by the steam, leaving not even a trace behind. I saw Guing and the other person approaching and waved to them with a smile. "The school's free Zhuanyuan porridge is actually quite tasty. It's sweet. Do you want to try some, just to get a bit of the name's good luck?" Guing glanced at the Zhuanyuan porridge all around and let out a soft snort, not hiding her disdain. "Only you would treasure something that's free like this." As she spoke, she waved to Lu Yao. Guing and Lu Yao were enjoying a lavish meal delivered by their family's nanny. Meanwhile, most people in the cafeteria were eating the standard cafeteria food, with a bowl of Zhuanyuan porridge placed beside them. That day, several large buckets of porridge prepared by the cafeteria were completely consumed, and my arm ached from ladling out so many servings. The next day was the college entrance exam. Chapter 6. I walked into the examination hall and completed the test paper with utmost seriousness. Although I already knew the final outcome, this exam was a conclusion to my 12 years of diligent study. After finishing the last exam and walking out of the exam hall, I let out a long sigh of relief. Someone tapped me on the shoulder from behind. It was Guing. "Top student, how many points do you think you scored?" I thought about it and said to her, "It should be the top in the city." She and Lu Yao burst into exaggerated laughter. "Then I'll congratulate you in advance." "Haha, the top in the city." After she finished laughing, she left together with Lu Yao. Watching her carefree figure, I curled the corner of my lips. I hope she can still be this carefree after seeing the results. After the college entrance exam, Guing never contacted me again. Come to think of it, she had already made plans to study abroad. Engaging with a poor, impoverished student like me was just for the fun of snatching grades. Now that the goal has been achieved, there's naturally no need to waste any more time, but my plan isn't over yet, considering what comes next. I found a day job at a convenience store organizing inventory. Every day, I tidy up the shelves and handle the cash register, which not only helps me save a bit for college tuition but also allows me to wait for news with peace of mind. During this period, online discussions about the college entrance exam scores in Nan province have become increasingly heated. Students from other provinces have gradually been able to check their scores, but only Nan province has been slow to respond. On Weibo, the hashtag Nan province college entrance exam scores stalled even made it to the trending list. What's going on? My younger brother took the college entrance exam in Nan province and is waiting for his results so anxiously that he can't sleep. Is there a problem with the system? Can the Education Bureau give a definite answer? I glanced at the comments on my phone, expressionlessly straightened the drinks on the shelf. All of this was within my expectations. Sure enough, one morning half a month later, I received a call from the police station. They asked me to return to school immediately, saying there was an important matter regarding the college entrance exam results to announce. When I changed into clean clothes and rushed to the school, the auditorium was already packed with people. Our school's senior students were seated by class, while students from other schools who had taken the exam here sat on the other side. Everyone was whispering to each other, their faces full of confusion. I found my class's spot and sat down, then glanced back and happened to see Guing and Lu Yao sitting 2 rows behind me to the right. Guing was wearing a designer dress and was playing on her phone, clearly not taking this announcement seriously. When she looked up, I smiled at her, but when Guing saw me, she couldn't even be bothered to pretend, rolling her eyes directly before lowering her head to play on her phone again. I didn't pay any attention. Not long after, several police officers entered the auditorium. The leading officer walked onto the stage, picked up the microphone, and said with a serious expression, I believe all the students are waiting for your college entrance exam results. Today, we will announce everyone's scores right here on the spot." As soon as the words were spoken, the auditorium erupted into chaos. Now, in front of everyone, what kind of segment is this? Wait, no one told me they were announcing the results like this year. The police officer on stage ignored the commotion and signaled the staff to switch the screen. Soon, the examinees' information appeared on the large screen, displayed in groups of 16, showing only their names, ID numbers, and total scores. When the first two groups were shown, there were only scattered discussions in the audience, but when the third group appeared, someone suddenly stood up, their voice trembling with emotion. "It's impossible. I always scored over 500 in my practice exams. How could I only get 267 points?" This sentence was like a bomb, instantly igniting the atmosphere in the auditorium. As the screen kept switching, more and more people discovered that their score was 267, whether they were top students, average students, or even those who were previously guaranteed a spot in vocational college. Everyone had the same score of 267. How is this possible? Could there be a system error? How come everyone has the same score? This is just too bizarre. Discussions, cries, and questions mingled together, turning the auditorium into chaos. I sat in my seat, a slight smile curling at the corners of my mouth. Yes, everyone's score was the same, 267 points, and this is the big gift I prepared for Guiying. I turned to look at Guiying. Leah was trembling as she grabbed her arm, her voice shaking. "Ying, what's going on? My score is also 267 points." Guiying frowned, her eyes wide as she stared at the screen. Her face gradually turned pale, shifting from initial indifference. Her hand tightly gripped the phone, her knuckles turning white. She caught sight of me out of the corner of her eye and abruptly turned her head to look. I met her gaze, curled my lips into a smile, and silently moved my lips, word by word, saying, "Do you like it?" Chapter 7. Guiying's body visibly swayed, her eyes filled with panic and resentment. She instinctively tried to stand up, but as soon as she lifted herself halfway, she slumped back into her seat dejectedly. The auditorium doors had long been guarded by police officers, and the surrounding candidates were whispering among themselves, pointing at the screen. "If she gets up now, she'll only draw more attention to herself," which is like walking right into a trap. I watched her struggle with a cold eye. It was clear that she was still gambling that her mysterious system hadn't malfunctioned, gambling that all of this was just a coincidence. Unfortunately, until all the candidate information on the screen had been cycled through, Guiying's name still hadn't appeared. At that moment, the last trace of color drained from her face, and she slumped weakly into her seat. The commotion in the auditorium continued to simmer as everyone looked toward the police officers on the stage, waiting for an explanation. These students, who had endured 12 years of diligent study, simply couldn't accept that their college entrance exam scores would be such bizarre numbers. The leading police officer picked up the microphone and gestured for everyone to quiet down. "Everyone, please calm down. We are currently investigating the cause of this situation, and no matter what the issue is, we will provide a satisfactory answer." His gaze swept across the room, pausing briefly on a few specific spots. I noticed his gaze lingered particularly long on Guiying. "Now, we need to randomly select a few students from the examinees to speak with individually for some routine inquiries. There's no need for anyone to feel nervous." After saying this, several police officers stepped down from the stage and called out a few names loudly in the silent auditorium. "Guiying, Liu Yao." As I stood up and walked out, I happened to pass by Guiying, who was also getting up. She glared at me fiercely and lowered her voice to say, "It was you who caused this, wasn't it?" She whispered, each word seeming to be squeezed out from between her teeth. "What do you know?" I gently freed my hand from her grasp, a faint smile curling at the corner of my lips. I gave her a slight nod and then followed the police toward the lounge next to the auditorium. This gesture neither confirmed nor denied anything, yet it was enough to unsettle her. In the lounge, two police officers sat across from me, asking in a gentle tone, "Student Tong Shan, did you encounter anything suspicious during the college entrance examination period?" I first shook my head, then my eyes reddened, and my voice choked with tears. "Officers, my score couldn't possibly be 267 points. I've always been the top student in my class, and I felt the exam went smoothly. There must be something wrong with this score. My family is poor, and the college entrance exam is my only chance to change my fate. You must help me get my score back." The police officer comforted me with a few words and then told me to go home. As I wiped my tears and stood up to leave, I suddenly froze. When I turned around, my face was deathly pale. I just remembered something. The police immediately took it seriously, and I whispered with trembling lips, "I don't know if it counts, but on the day the college entrance exam ended, my deskmate Guiying suddenly said something to me, hoping that I would score high enough for her." I didn't understand it at the time, but just now on the screen, I didn't seem to see her name. As soon as these words were spoken, the two police officers' expressions changed. They exchanged a glance and then wrote something down in their notebooks. After that, they told me to return to the auditorium first. Just as I stepped out of the lounge, I happened to see Guiying being stopped by two police officers. She was struggling and shouting, "What gives you the right to interrogate me? I haven't done anything wrong." Classmate Gu then explained why all the students taking the exam at this school scored 267 points. Chapter 8. The police officer's expression was stern, with no possibility of showing favoritism. Guiying still stubbornly insisted, "Isn't that what you're supposed to investigate? How could I possibly know?" The police officer pressed further. "Then do you know how many points you scored on the exam?" My footsteps slowed down. Guiying sneered coldly. "You've blocked all the results. How am I supposed to know? Why are you asking such pointless questions?" Seeing her stubborn refusal to admit the truth until faced with undeniable evidence, the police officer sighed. "Your total college entrance exam score is 500,648 points." Upon hearing this, I and several other classmates who had also finished their questioning and were about to return to the auditorium turned around in shock. Guiying also widened her eyes, her face instantly turning pale, completely losing her previous arrogance. This can't be possible." The police officer frowned at her. "No, are you still unwilling to tell the truth? What method did you actually use?" Guiying was so frightened that her whole body trembled, and she stammered as she spoke. Before she could utter a few words, the door of another lounge opened. Leah rushed out, pointing at Guiying and crying as she said, "Officer, I want to report. Guiying told me before that she has a system that can steal other people's scores. She's been stealing Tong Shen's scores during the mock exams before the college entrance exam. Please investigate her. I beg you, you must get my scores back." Sure enough, you don't know the pain until the knife falls on you. With Lia's testimony, Guiying could no longer deny it. She collapsed to the ground, crying and glaring at us while shouting insults. "Yes. So what if I'm bound to a system? I gave her the stuff, but Tong Shan ate it willingly. Why blame me? My family has plenty of money. What's wrong with having some fun with those lowly commoners?" Guiying was quickly dragged into the police car by the officers and taken away. The incident was soon reported to the national education authorities. Due to the involvement of an unknown so-called system, the government took the matter very seriously. We specially assembled a top-tier technical team to crack Guiying's plundering system. We also successfully extracted all the plundered scores from the system's backend. After restoring the records that had been tampered with by the system, we accurately returned the scores to everyone based on each candidate's answer records. As for Guiying, due to illegally disrupting the order of the national education examination, not only were her college entrance exam results cancelled, but she is also banned from taking the exam for life. She was also held legally accountable, and her application to study abroad was rejected. A few days later, I finally checked my college entrance exam score online, 687 points, far exceeding the admission requirements for Tsinghua and Peking University. Looking at the score on the screen, I finally breathed a sigh of relief, my eyes growing slightly warm. The regrets and pain of my past life were finally made up for in this one. The setting sun shines through the window, falling on my admission letter. I know that my life will never be stolen by anyone again. End of story. That's all for the first story. Don't go away. The next story is even more exciting. After my father remarried, my stepmother saw me, the fool, as the most unwelcome presence in the house. She often punished me by making me handle the filthiest and smelliest flower fertilizer, leaving me dirty and foul. When my father asked about it, my stepmother flustered and explained, "Master, this high-quality flower soil was transported from the Punglai Immortal Island. It is the most fertile and nourishing. Perhaps if our peony comes into contact with it more, she might become more clear-headed and perceptive." I remember, I thought this was the best thing my stepmother had ever found for me, so, when she hit me for accidentally breaking a peony, I decided to bury her along with the broken flower in the soil, with a little care. Maybe it will grow back just fine. At 1001 hashtag, my father is a minister in the current court, and our mansion is never short of rare and expensive flowers. My stepmother, Lady Lu, loves that patch of peonies the most, treasuring them as if they were her own eyes. This afternoon, I was chasing a beautiful butterfly and accidentally ran into the flower garden, breaking a budding jade tower spring peony. When my stepmother saw it, her face turned pale with anger. She rushed over and slapped me across the face, making my ears ring. "You little jinx, you can't accomplish anything, but you're good at ruining everything. Do you know how precious this flower is? Even if you were beaten to death, you couldn't pay for it." Her sharp nails scraped across my face, leaving a burning pain. I covered my face and looked at the broken white peony on the ground, feeling very sad. I broke my stepmother's favorite thing, and she must be very upset. I want to make her happy again. Suddenly, I remembered what she said to my father. The flower soil shipped from Punlai Immortal Island is the most fertile and nourishing. If I can take care of people, can I take good care of both people and flowers? My eyes lit up. I had a great idea. While all the servants were busy preparing dinner, I dragged a large sack and quietly slipped into the small shed in the backyard where the potting soil was stored. The smell there was foul and pungent, but I wasn't afraid at all, because my stepmother said it was something good. I shoveled the flour mud into the sack, filled it to the brim, and then dragged it with great effort back to the front yard. My stepmother was sulking in her room. I pushed the door open, and she looked at me with both shock and anger. "You little bitch, how dare you come to my place?" I ignored her, walked up to her, and with all my strength, I yanked open the sack. The black potting soil, mixed with rotten leaves and grass roots, poured all over her luxurious dress with a loud rustle. She let out a piercing scream, trying to stand up, but tripped over the flower soil and fell to the ground. I walked over to her, crouched down, and began piling the black soil onto her body, bit by bit, with my hands, just like how I usually helped the gardener grandpa with hilling the flowers. "Don't be afraid," I whispered to her, my voice filled with sincerity and concern. "I'll bury you together with the flowers, nourishing you both with the finest soil. Soon, both of you will grow well again." At 1001 hashtag, the mansion instantly fell into chaos. The maid's screams and my stepmother's faint cries blended together, giving me a headache. When father arrived upon hearing the news, I had just finished covering my stepmother's face with the last handful of soil, leaving only 2 nostrils for her to breathe. I thought I had done quite well, and even patted the soil smooth with my hand. When father saw the scene in the room, his eyes widened like copper bells, and he was speechless for a long time. Behind him, my sister Lu Ying, the biological daughter of my stepmother, was the first to react. "Sumyudin, are you insane? Are you trying to kill my mother?" She rushed over to push me, but slipped on the muddy ground and fell flat on her back. Soon, several sturdy maids worked together to dig the stepmother out of the mud. The stepmother was covered in filth and stench, her hair filled with rotten leaves, spitting out 2 mouthfuls of black mud before her eyes rolled back and she fainted. Father was trembling with anger, pointing at me, his lips quivering. You unfilial daughter." I stood there, looking utterly bewildered. Did I do something wrong? I'm helping her. I pointed at the pile of potting soil and tried to explain to father. Stepmother said this is good stuff from Punlai Immortal Island, the best for nourishing people. She and the flowers are both damaged, so I'm using good stuff to nourish them. Isn't that right? My words made the entire room fall silent. Everyone looked at me as if I were a monster. Lu Ying scrambled up from the ground, pointed at my nose, and screamed with a mix of anger and fear. "You fool, you lunatic. Can't you tell my mother was being sarcastic? She only told you to touch those things because she thinks you're filthy." Sarcastic? What does sarcastic mean? I tilted my head, unable to figure it out no matter how hard I thought. Finally, father waved his hand wearily. "Lock her in the woodshed. She is not to come out without my orders." I was dragged up by 2 old maids. I didn't resist, but I kept thinking about Lu Ying's words in my mind. So, my stepmother didn't really think the flower mud was good. So, adults do tell lies, it seems. I've learned something new again. At 1001 hashtag, the woodshed was dark and damp, with only 1 small window. I sat on the haystack, hugging my knees, listening to the chirping of insects outside. I didn't cry, nor did I feel afraid. I was just thinking, in this world, how many words are true, and how many are false? The next day at noon, the door opened. It wasn't father who came in, but Lu Ying. She had changed into clean clothes, but her face still looked terrible, and the way she looked at me seemed as if she were about to spit fire. "Sumyudin," she stood at the door, looking down at me from above. "Mother is ill. The doctor said she was frightened and has been tainted by foul energy. It will take a long time for her to recover." I let out an ow. It seems that mud wasn't a good thing. My stepmother was lying to me. My calmness seemed to infuriate her even more. "Don't think you can get away with playing dumb," she said through gritted teeth. "You made my mother bedridden, and I won't forget this debt." She paused, a flicker of malice in her eyes. "You know, you and my crippled fiancé are truly a match made in heaven. One is a fool, the other a cripple, a perfect pair of good-for-nothings." Crippled fiancé? I was taken aback. The cripple that Lu Ying mentioned is the heir of the Dingyan Marquis Manor, Pei Yin. It is said that he was originally the most famous young general in the capital, but unfortunately, he injured his leg on the northern border battlefield 3 years ago and has been confined to a wheelchair ever since. This marriage was something her stepmother had worked hard to secure for Lu Ying. It seems now that Lu Ying is quite dissatisfied. Seeing that I had no reaction, she sneered coldly and continued venting her resentment with the harshest words. "Just thinking about marrying a useless man who can't even walk makes me so sick I want to vomit. and now that my mother is so ill, my heart feels as if thousands of ants are gnawing at it, both painful and itchy. I wish I could just die right now and be done with it all." After saying this, she glared at me fiercely, turned around, and slammed the door shut with a loud bang. The firewood room returned to darkness. I sat where I was, slowly blinking my eyes. In my heart, it felt as if thousands of ants were gnawing, both painful and itchy. "Still want to die? I understand. Sister must be feeling extremely upset right now, just as upset as the stepmother was that day when her flowers were ruined. I have to help her." At 1001 hashtag, I was locked in the firewood shed for 3 days. Father probably thought that by locking me up, he could calm stepmother and Lu Yingying's anger. On the third night, the old woman guarding me drank too much and fell asleep at the table. I quietly pushed the door open and slipped out. The night was deep, and the mansion was quiet. Instead of returning to my own courtyard, I relied on my memory and found my way to Lu Yingying's embroidery tower. I knew she must still be suffering from the pain of ants gnawing at her heart. I had to help her resolve this pain immediately. How to solve it? Since she said her heart feels like it's being gnawed by ants, I'll find some real ants to let her see what it actually feels like to be bitten by ants. Perhaps by comparing, the pain in her heart will lessen. I'm such a clever child. I went around to the garden behind the embroidery tower, where there was a large locust tree, and I knew there was a big ant nest under it. Using a large leaf, I carefully scooped up a full pack of reddish-brown ants that looked quite formidable. Then, like a little cat, I silently climbed up to the windowsill on the second floor of the embroidery tower. The window was unlocked. I gently pushed it open and climbed in. The room was filled with the soothing scent of calming incense. And Lu Yingying was already asleep. Moonlight fell on her beautiful face, and she seemed to be sleeping peacefully. I walked to her bedside and looked at the embroidered brocade quilt with mandarin ducks covering her. This must be her favorite thing. I gently lifted the corner of the quilt and carefully poured in the gift I had brought. Countless reddish-brown ants instantly swarmed all over the smooth silk lining. After finishing all this, I quietly climbed back out through the window and returned to the woodshed. I lay on the haystack, feeling very content. My sister's suffering will soon be cured, right? Not long after, a heart-wrenching scream tore through the quiet night sky of the Su residence. That sound was even more miserable than when my stepmother was buried in the earth that day. The entire Su residence was in an uproar. I lay on the haystack in the firewood shed, listening to the chaotic footsteps and cries outside, feeling completely calm inside. It seems my method worked very well. At 1001 hashtag, the next morning, the door of the firewood shed was kicked open. Father rushed in, his eyes bloodshot. Like an enraged lion, he grabbed me from the haystack and threw me hard onto the ground. "Was it you? Speak. Was it you who did it?" My bones felt like they were about to shatter, and the pain left me speechless. Lu Yingying was bitten badly by ants, with red swollen bumps all over her body. Her beautiful face was swollen like a pig's head, and she had a persistent high fever. Several doctors came to see her and just shook their heads, saying that even if she were saved, she would inevitably be left with countless scars. For a beauty who values her appearance as much as her life, this was worse than killing her. I lay on the ground, looking at my father's furious face, and nodded honestly. It was me. Why would you do this to your sister?" Father roared, his voice trembling. Enduring the pain, I answered him earnestly. "Sister said her heart feels like it's being gnawed by ants, and it's very uncomfortable. I just wanted to help her." "You..." Father raised his hand, wanting to hit me, but as he looked at my face, which bore a 70% resemblance to our deceased mother, and my clear yet bewildered eyes, his hand ultimately couldn't come down. He dropped his hand dejectedly. His eyes filled with pain and despair. Family disgrace, he staggered away, as if he had aged 10 years in an instant. This time, I was not locked in the woodshed again, because such a major incident had occurred in the mansion. Father, fearing I might cause more trouble, sent me to a villa in the outskirts of the city and assigned 2 honest old women to watch over me. Before I left, I heard something. Someone from the Dingyan Marquis household had come. They weren't there to call off the engagement, but to discuss moving the wedding date forward. At 1001 hashtag, the courtyard I live in is very quiet, filled with osmanthus trees. The servants are all afraid of me. Besides bringing meals, they usually stay far away and dare not speak to me. I enjoy the peace and quiet. After living here for half a month, I almost thought I had been forgotten by the world, until that day. A horse-drawn carriage arrived in the courtyard. From the carriage, a young man in a wheelchair was helped down by someone. He was dressed in a moon-white robe, with handsome features and gentle eyes, though his complexion was excessively pale. Behind him followed an expressionless guard. The women, upon seeing him, respectfully knelt down to pay their respects. "Greetings, Lord Pei." He was Pei Yin, Lu Yingying's crippled fiancé. He paid no attention to the women, merely maneuvering his wheelchair, and came directly before me. "He is very close to me." carrying a faint scent of herbs. "Are you Sumutin?" he spoke, his voice like the clinking of jade, clear and pleasant. I nodded, looking at him with curiosity. A thin blanket covered his legs, making it impossible to see the extent of his injuries, but even sitting in a wheelchair, he still had a presence that couldn't be ignored. "I've heard about what happened in the mansion." He looked at me, his expression calm, without the fear, disgust, or pity that others showed. "They all say you're a madwoman." I shook my head and corrected him very seriously. "I'm not mad. I was helping them." Hearing my words, instead of finding it absurd, he let out a soft laugh. A smile brought a touch of vitality to his pale face, like the first thaw of ice and snow. "I know," he said. "You just trust too much in what others say." I was stunned. He was the first person who neither scolded me nor feared me. He was also the first person who seemed to understand me a little. "Your sister," he said, looking into my eyes slowly, "no longer wants to die, nor does she want her heart to be gnawed by ants. What she wants most now is to go to Jing'an Temple outside the capital to pray for her mother's well-being. Ideally, she would stay there for 3 to 5 years to demonstrate her filial piety, pray for her stepmother. For 3 to 5 years, I'm a bit confused. When did Lu Yingying have this wish?" Pei Yan seemed to see through my thoughts. He took out a small candy-wrapped item from his sleeve and handed it to me. "This is pine nut candy, very sweet," he said gently. "She told me this herself. She said only then could the pain in her heart truly be soothed." I took the candy, unwrapped it, and put it in my mouth. "It's really sweet. Since she said it herself, it must be true. I must help my sister fulfill this filial wish." At 1001 hashtag, after Pei Yan left, I started thinking about how to help Lu Yingying again. Praying at Jing'an Temple will take another 3 to 5 years. That sounds much harder than finding ants. I definitely can't do it alone. I sat under the osmanthus tree, pondering for several days, and finally came up with a solution. The opportunity soon arrived. That day, Father sent a messenger with a letter saying that my stepmother had recovered significantly and wanted me to return home. I knew they didn't truly miss me. It was because Lu Yingying and Pei Yan's wedding date was approaching, and the Su family couldn't afford to have a reputation for mistreating their legitimate daughter at such a time. Returning to the Su residence, Lu Yingying saw me and acted as if she had seen a ghost, keeping her distance. Although the swelling and redness on her face had subsided, many dark marks remained, and her former beauty could never be restored. The way she looked at me was filled with resentment and fear. I didn't care. I only kept in mind the task that Pei Yan had entrusted to me. At night, I secretly slipped into Lu Yingying's room. I imitated the way heroes in operas would, covering my face with a black cloth. Lu Yingying was applying expensive ointment in front of the mirror, and when she saw me, she was scared out of her wits. What do you want to do?" I didn't say a word, pulling out a pair of scissors I had stolen from the kitchen, and slowly approached her step by step. "Help, someone, help!" She screamed in terror, but I had already observed that at this time her maids had all gone to the small kitchen to prepare her bird's nest soup, and there was no one in the courtyard at all. I covered her mouth with my hand and pressed her down in front of the dressing table. She struggled desperately, whimpering in fear. Lowering my voice, I imitated the tone of a storyteller and said to her viciously, "Miss Su, someone asked me to deliver a message to you." I looked into her terrified eyes in the mirror and said, word by word, he said, "You can either obediently go to Jing'an Temple, keep your hair and practice spiritual cultivation, praying for your mother for 3 years, or I will slash your face right now, making you unable to face anyone for the rest of your life." As I spoke, I gently traced the cold tip of the scissors across her cheek. She immediately froze in fear, not daring to move anymore. I continued, "Don't worry. If you choose the first path, everyone will praise your filial piety that moved heaven, but if you choose the second path," I deliberately paused and, with a snip of the scissors, cut off a lock of her hair. "Then there will no longer be a Miss Su in the Minister Su's residence." Lu Yingying's body trembled like a leaf in the autumn wind. She looked at me in the mirror, tears falling like broken strings of pearls, then nodded desperately. I released her. She immediately collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. I threw the scissors onto the table, turned, and leaped out the window, disappearing into the night. I know that by tomorrow morning, the entire capital will know that the eldest daughter of the Su family, in order to pray for her mother's well-being, has voluntarily gone to Jing'an Temple to practice as a lay Buddhist for 3 years. Once again, I have helped my sister fulfill her wish. The candy Pei Yan gave me was truly sweet. At 1001 hashtag, as expected, the news of Lu Yingying going to Jing'an Temple spread throughout the capital the very next day. Everyone praised her for her pure filial piety, and the Su family's Ministry of Rites household gained a great reputation because of it, although her father was reluctant to let her go. Seeing her resolute attitude and considering it involved their reputation, he had no choice but to agree. On the day Lu Ying left, she cried as pitifully as a pear blossom bathed in rain. Only I knew that beneath her lowered eyelids lay a deep-seated fear of me. She left, and the marriage between the Su family and the Dingin Marquis household naturally fell through, but strangely, the Dingin Marquis household not only showed no resentment but instead sent many valuable gifts, claiming it was to thank the Su family for their understanding and righteousness. All of this seemed odd, but as a fool, I wouldn't dwell on such matters. After Lu Ying left, my stepmother's arrogance in the household diminished significantly. Although she still doesn't like me, she no longer dares to beat or scold me as she used to. The way she looks at me is like looking at a powder keg that could explode at any moment. The mansion suddenly became much quieter every day. Aside from eating and sleeping, I just sit in the courtyard staring blankly, until one day, Pei Yin came again. He was still sitting in that wheelchair, followed by his silent guard. He came to see father. They talked for a long time in the study. I secretly pressed my ear against the door to listen. I only heard Pei Yin speaking in his cool, composed voice, unhurriedly saying, "Minister Su, although the marriage arrangement between your daughter and myself has been called off, the friendship between our families remains. Miss Muden is pure and adorable, and I, Pei Yin, have come to admire her. I wish to ask for Miss Muden's hand in marriage, and I hope you will grant your approval." In the study, my father's teacup clattered to the floor with a crash. Even I widened my eyes in shock. He wants to marry me, the fool everyone avoids. I heard father stammer, Your Highness, you must be joking, right? My daughter, she is not of sound mind. How could she possibly become the crown princess? It's fine. Pei Yan's voice remained calm. I am disabled, and Miss Muden is innocent and lively. The two of us are a perfect match. In my eyes, she is not foolish, just purer than anyone else. That day, after Pei Yan left, father sat in the study for the entire afternoon. In the evening, he called me over. He looked at me, his gaze as complicated as a tangled mess. "Peony," he asked me in an unprecedentedly gentle tone, Are you willing to marry the Pei heir?" I looked at father. This was the first time he had ever asked for my opinion in a consultative manner. I thought of Pei Yin. I remembered his gentle smile, and that sweet pine nut candy he gave me. He was the only one who said I was pure. I nodded. "I do." At 1001 hashtag, my marriage with Pei Yin was quickly settled. This marriage became the laughingstock of the entire capital. A cripple, matched with a fool, perfect match. My stepmother was so angry that she fell ill. She had always dreamed of marrying her own daughter into the Marquis' household, but in the end, this incredible stroke of luck landed on me, the fool she despised the most. I don't care what others say, all I know is that I am going to marry Pei Yin, marry the only one who understands me and gives me candy. On the day of the grand wedding, I was dressed in bright red wedding attire, covered with a red veil, and sent into the Dingin Marquis Manor. The Marquis Manor was vast, yet desolate. Both the Marquis of Dingin and the Marquise had passed away, and now, in the entire Marquis Manor, Pei Yin was the sole authority. In the evening, in the bridal chamber, Pei Yin dismissed everyone. He wheeled himself in front of me and gently lifted my red veil. Under the glow of the red candles, his face appeared gentler than usual, yet also paler. He looked at me for a long time, and then smiled. "You look very beautiful today." I felt a little embarrassed and lowered my head. He handed me a glass of wine. "This is the nuptial wine. Once we drink it, we will be husband and wife." I followed his example and drank the wine. The wine was a bit spicy, making me cough twice. He reached out and gently wiped the wine stain from the corner of my mouth with his fingertip, his movements very tender. "Peony," he looked into my eyes and asked seriously, "Do you know what it means to be husband and wife?" I shook my head. He said slowly, "Husband and wife are the closest people in this world. From now on, no matter who bullies you, you can tell me, whatever you want to do, I will help you." "Me too." I lifted my head, looked at him, and said with equal seriousness, "From now on, if anyone bullies you, I will help you too." He was taken aback for a moment, then the smile in his eyes deepened. "All right." That night, we didn't act like other newlyweds. He simply let me sleep on the bed. While he slept on the soft couch in the outer room, he said that his legs and feet were not very nimble, and he didn't want to crush me. Lying on the soft bed, breathing in the same herbal scent that lingered in the air and on him, I felt very much at ease. Marrying him seemed like a very good thing. At 1001 hashtag, life after marriage was peaceful and comfortable. Pei Yin truly dotes on me. He personally teaches me how to write, reads me books I don't understand, and has people search for all kinds of novel snacks and trinkets for me. Everyone in the Marquis' residence knows that I am the one held most dearly in the heart of the heir, and no one dares to slight me. It seems as though I have truly become a little princess cherished by the whole world. However, Pei Yan's health has never been very good. He needs to take medicine all year round. And on rainy days, his legs hurt so much that he can't sleep through the night. Whenever this happens, I would imitate my mother's way and sing the only nursery rhyme I know to him. He would listen quietly, then hold my hand and slowly fall asleep. The days passed by quickly, and in the blink of an eye, it was the end of the year. The palace was going to hold a New Year's Eve banquet, and father sent a letter asking Pei Yan to take me back to the mansion to attend. This was my first time returning to the Su residence since getting married. The Su residence was still the same as before, but my stepmother looked much older. When she saw Pei Yan and me, she forced a smile that was uglier than crying. At the banquet, glasses clinked and the atmosphere was lively and bustling. I sat beside Pei Yan, who kept serving me food, carefully removing all the bones from the fish before placing it in my bowl. In the middle of the banquet, I went to freshen up and encountered my stepmother's brother, Uncle Lu, in the corridor. Imperial Uncle Lu is a powerful minister at court, with a burly build and a face full of rough features. His gaze always carries a fierce and intimidating air when he looks at people. He blocked my path. "So you're Su Munin?" He looked me up and down, his eyes filled with contempt and disdain. "Is it because of a fool like you that my sister and niece ended up in such a state?" I don't like the look in his eyes. I didn't say anything and tried to walk around him, but he grabbed my arm with such force that it felt like he was trying to crush my bones. "Don't be in such a hurry to leave." He leaned in close, lowering his voice and speaking viciously. "Don't think that just because you married that good-for-nothing Pei Yan, you have someone to back you up. Let me tell you, you and your crippled husband are nothing but ants in my eyes." The suffering my sister endured, the pain Ying went through, sooner or later, I will make you pay it back 1,000 times over. He pointed at his own chest, gritting his teeth and said, "If I don't vent this anger, it feels like a block of eternal ice is stuck in my heart. I won't rest in peace until I melt it away." After saying that, he roughly pushed me away and strode off. I staggered back 2 steps and leaned against a pillar. The spot on my arm where he had grabbed me was burning with pain. But what was on my mind were the words he had just spoken. "A block of eternal ice stuck in my heart. I need to melt it away, so I won't die with regrets." I understand. So, this is what Imperial Uncle Lu wanted. He looked so miserable. I should help him. I returned to the banquet and repeated every word Imperial Uncle Lu had just said to Pei Yan. Pei Yan listened quietly, swirling his wine glass in his hand, his face expressionless. After listening, he lifted his head and smiled at me. "I understand." He patted my head, his voice carrying a barely noticeable chill. "Peony, would you like to see a fire more beautiful than the Lantern Festival fireworks?" My eyes lit up. "Yes," he laughed. "All right, then I'll show it to you." At 1001 hashtag, not long after the New Year's Eve banquet, a heavy snow fell in the capital. Imperial Uncle Lu was going to the royal hunting grounds outside the city to prepare for the spring hunt. This is his annual tradition. Pei Yan told me that Imperial Uncle Lu would stay overnight in the largest wooden building in the hunting grounds. He also told me that to keep warm, the building had a complex underfloor heating system fueled by highly flammable Western region oil. When he said this, his tone was very calm, as if he were talking about some trivial matter, but I remembered everything. That night, the wind howled and snow fell heavily. I put on the guard's uniform, covered my face with a black cloth, and slipped out of the Marquis's residence unnoticed. Pei Yan's guard, the man named Imoing, was already waiting for me at the back door. He didn't ask anything, just gave me a fire starter, then drove an inconspicuous carriage, taking me out of the city. The royal hunting grounds were heavily guarded, but Moing seemed very familiar with this place. He led me, easily avoiding all the patrolling guards, and we arrived at the back of that wooden building. He pointed to an inconspicuous ventilation opening. "Just throw the fire starter in from here, and that's it." I nodded, opened the fire starter, blew the flame to life, aimed it at the pitch-black opening, and threw it in. After doing all this, Moing immediately took me and quietly slipped away. When we returned to the city, we saw from a distance that half the sky outside the city was glowing red. That firelight was indeed more beautiful than fireworks. Returning to the Marquis's residence, Pei Yan was still waiting for me. He had prepared a steaming cup of ginger tea for me. "Are you cold?" He took my hand, wrapping my cold fingertips in his warm palm. I shook my head and sipped the ginger tea slowly. "Pei Yan," I looked at him, somewhat puzzled, and asked, "Will this melt the ice in Imperial Uncle Lu's heart?" "Yes." He looked into my eyes and nodded firmly. "Not only will it melt the ice, but it will also make his entire being feel warm." I nodded, only half understanding. "That's good." I helped another person. The next day, news arrived. Imperial Uncle Lu died unexpectedly in a ground fire at the royal hunting grounds, along with his most trusted dozen confidants, all perishing in the flames with no remains left. The court and the public were shaken. At 1001 hashtag, the death of Imperial Uncle Lu caused a huge uproar in the court. He held significant power and had many followers, and his death threw many people into disarray. The emperor ordered a thorough investigation, but in the end, it was only classified as an accident. After all, no one could have imagined that someone could infiltrate the heavily guarded royal hunting grounds without being detected. Only I know it wasn't an accident, but I'm a fool, and no one would believe my words. With the death of Imperial Uncle Lou, my stepmother's status in the Sioux residence plummeted, becoming completely powerless and invisible. She stayed in her courtyard all day, never stepping beyond the inner gates. As if all her spirit had been drained away, this year, the Sioux residence passed in a desolate and lonely manner. However, the Dingin Marquis estate, because of Pei Yan's strategic planning in the imperial court, gradually became different. Those who used to look down on him and call him a useless person are now starting to flatter him by visiting his home. He is no longer the idle heir who could only recuperate in the mansion. He entered the center of power in a wheelchair. I watched him handle various complex matters every day, meeting all kinds of people, and felt as if he was drifting further and further away from me. I was a bit unhappy. He seemed to notice my disappointment. That evening, after finishing his official duties, he came to my room. He didn't let the servants follow him, maneuvering the wheelchair himself to come to my side. "Peony," he took my hand and asked softly, "Are you unhappy?" I buried my head in his chest and said gloomily, "You're so busy now, you don't spend time with me anymore." He chuckled and ruffled my hair. "I'm sorry, it's my fault." He pulled me onto his lap, holding me in his arms. "Soon, once everything is settled, I'll be with you every day." "Okay, what things?" I asked curiously. He fell silent for a moment, the moonlight from outside the window casting a silver glow on his profile. "Something that will make you never have to pretend to be foolish again." I blinked, pretending not to understand what he was saying, but his fingertips gently brushed past my ear, where there was an old scar. It was a mark I made with scissors myself when I was 7 years old, after I inexplicably developed a high fever. That high fever turned me into a fool. "Peony," he whispered in a low voice, "your eyes shine especially bright every time you help someone fulfill a wish." My hand, clutching his collar, trembled slightly. "The night Lu Ying was bitten by ants, you slipped snake repellent powder under her pillow because you knew the silver-ringed snake in the backyard was about to lay eggs. On the night the hunting grounds caught fire, you deliberately chose the west wind direction, leaving an escape route for the night watch guards." He cupped my face, his gaze as if it could pierce through all disguises. "There have been far too many coincidences like this." I opened my mouth, my throat tight. 3 years ago, during the battle in the northern frontier, he suddenly changed the subject. Our commander was ambushed and trapped in a valley. A young soldier risked his life crossing the fire line to deliver the defense map. I shuddered all over. That soldier's face was covered in black soot, and he was limping, but his eyes were exceptionally bright. Pei Yan's fingers brushed over the scar behind my ear. "Just like you are now." So he had known all along. He knew I wasn't truly foolish, knew I had overheard the Lu family's conspiracy, and couldn't bear to see this patriotic young soldier die. Taking advantage of my father confining me to the mountain nunnery for quiet recuperation, I had personally gone to warn him. "Why?" My voice came out hoarse. "Because I'm waiting for the day you're willing to tell me yourself." He pressed his forehead against mine. "Waiting for my little fox to come out of her den on her own." Suddenly, urgent knocking sounded from outside the window. Mo Ying's voice came from beyond the door. "Young master, someone from the palace has come with an edict, summoning you to enter the palace immediately." Pei Yan tidied my collar for me, his gaze as deep as an abyss. "It seems someone is growing impatient." Just before he stepped out, I slipped a pine nut candy into his palm. "Come back early," I said. "I left a light on for you." This time, I didn't feign a foolish tone. He smiled, his eyes sparkling like stars. At 1001 hashtag, Pei Yan didn't return until the first light of dawn. He carried the dampness of the morning dew in a faint, elusive scent of blood. I sat by the window, still holding the half-eaten pine nut candy in my hand. He wheeled himself over to me, his face showing unmistakable weariness, but his eyes were unusually bright. "Has everything been taken care of?" I asked, my voice unusually clear in the quiet of the early morning. He gave a slight nod, took my hand, and placed something cold in my palm. It was a black iron token, engraved with intricate dragon patterns that felt icy to the touch. "Bestowed by His Majesty," he said casually. "From today onward, I will be in charge of the surveillance department." I held the heavy token in my hand, my heart trembling. The Surveillance Bureau, directly under the Emperor's command, held the authority to investigate, arrest, and execute without prior approval. The late Imperial Uncle Lou had once exhausted all means to infiltrate it but failed. Now, it had so easily fallen into Pei Yan's hands. This meant that the Emperor had not only completely purged Imperial Uncle Lu's influence but had also placed immense trust in Pei Yan. Last night in the palace, I hesitated before speaking. A cleansing. Pei Yan's tone was calm and unruffled, as if he were speaking of an ordinary matter. "All remnants of the Lu faction who resisted have been executed." He said it lightly, but I could imagine the clash of blades and shadows within the palace walls last night. The imperial Uncle Lu had built his influence over many years, with deep roots. To pull them out entirely was bound to be accompanied by a storm of violence. Despite his leg, he had to maneuver in such a vortex. Looking at his pale face, my heart inexplicably tightened. "Your leg, it's fine," he interrupted me, holding my hand. His fingertips were a bit cold, but, "Peony, I'm afraid we'll have to move into the palace for a while." I was taken aback. He explained, "By the Emperor's decree, I am to temporarily take charge of the palace guards and assist with state affairs. Living in the palace will be more convenient." Looking into his deep eyes, I suddenly understood something. Assisting in governance, overseeing the censorate and the Imperial Guard, this is far from a temporary role. It is clearly a prelude to the heavy responsibility of entrusting an orphaned heir. The emperor is old and frail, the crown prince is young. He intends to place the weight of the entire state on Pei Yan's shoulders, and by summoning me into the palace as well, it is both an honor and a means of holding a hostage. The emperor intends to use me to ensure Pei Yan's absolute loyalty. Pei Yan seemed to see through my thoughts. He gently squeezed my fingers and said, "Don't be afraid, I'm here." I looked at him and suddenly smiled, clasping his slightly cool fingers in return. "I'm not afraid." After a pause, I added, "There must be many people in the palace who need help, right?" Pei Yan was taken aback for a moment, then let out a low chuckle. His laughter carried a hint of helplessness, but more than that, indulgence. "You do as you please, but remember, the palace is not like the outside world. There are many rules and even more eyes watching. Be careful in everything you do." I nodded obediently. "I know. I'll play the fool well." At 1001 hashtag, I was settled in the Chonghua Palace, not far from the imperial study. The palace staff treated me, the foolish princess consort, with surface-level respect, but their eyes held curiosity and scrutiny. I continued to maintain my naive and ignorant appearance, spending my days either chasing butterflies in the imperial garden or crouching by the teapot watching the koi fish. Pei Yan grew increasingly busy, often discussing state affairs in the imperial study throughout the night, but no matter how late it was, he would always return to Chonghua Palace to share a late-night meal with me or simply sit quietly for a while. I know that countless eyes are watching us in secret, especially watching me, trying to find Pei Yan's weaknesses through this fool. Until that day, I encountered the 10-year-old crown prince in the imperial garden. The crown prince was surrounded by several study companions and eunuchs, practicing archery. He was young and lacked arm strength, so his arrows always landed weakly in front of the target, causing the slightly older study companions to whisper among themselves, their eyes filled with undisguised contempt. The guard captain responsible for teaching archery was a former subordinate of Imperial Uncle Lu, surnamed Sun. Outwardly respectful, his guidance was extremely perfunctory. When the young prince missed the target yet again, he even let out an almost imperceptible sneer. The young prince flushed red, biting his lip tightly as he stubbornly drew the bow once more, his small hands trembling. I was crouching in the flower bed nearby, pretending to study a rare black chrysanthemum. "Your Highness, your posture is incorrect." I lifted my head, flashing a silly grin, and pointed at Commander Sun. "What he just taught you is wrong. Your shoulders need to sink another inch lower, and your waist should be taut like a drawn bowstring, not all loose and slack like his." Everyone froze, staring at me in astonishment as the fool who had suddenly spoken up. Commander Sun's face darkened. "Mind your words, Princess Consort. How I instruct His Highness is not for you to question." I tilted my head, wearing an innocent expression. "But what you're teaching is really wrong. My father taught me before, even though I couldn't learn it. I remember how it should look. If you do it your way, the arrow will fly off to the left." The little prince looked at me in confusion, then at Commander Sun. Commander Sun, being publicly questioned, especially by a fool, felt his pride wounded and grew angry out of shame. "Is the crown princess doubting my martial skills, though I may lack talent? I have been tempered on the battlefield. If you've been tempered on the battlefield, you really shouldn't be teaching it wrong." I blinked, my tone growing even more puzzled. "Did you shoot arrows like that on the battlefield too? How did you even survive?" "You..." Commander Sun's face turned livid with anger as he took a step forward, seemingly wanting to reprimand me. "Commander Sun," a cold voice sounded from behind. Pei Yan had arrived at some point. He sat in his wheelchair, calmly watching Commander Sun. Commander Sun stiffened all over and immediately bowed in salute. "Lord Pei." Pei Yan didn't look at him, controlling the wheelchair to approach the young crown prince. He took the small bow from the prince's hand and gently asked, "Your Highness, would you like to learn how to hit the bullseye?" The young crown prince's eyes lit up, and he nodded vigorously. Pei Yan signaled MOing to push him to the archery position. He adjusted his posture, though unable to stand. His upper body remained as straight and firm as a pine tree. He nocked the arrow, drew the bow, his movements flowing smoothly with a unique grace. Whoosh! The arrow cut through the air, striking the bullseye in the distance with precision, its fletching quivering slightly. The young crown prince and the palace attendants around him were all stunned. Payin sat down his bow and looked at Commander Sun. His tone still calm. Commander Sun, with your extensive battlefield experience, it must be due to recent overwork and a momentary lapse. Perhaps you should take a few days to rest. For now, the deputy commander will take over the Crown Prince's archery and equestrian training. Commander Sun's face turned deathly pale, and cold sweat trickled down his forehead. He understood that he would likely never again come close to the center of power. Not daring to say another word, he cowed out in gratitude for the mercy shown, then retreated in disgrace. The little prince looked at Payin with admiration. Mr. Pei, you're truly amazing. Payin smiled, patted the prince's head, then looked at me with a questioning gaze in his eyes. I gave him a silly grin, ran over to tug at his sleeve. Payin, I'm hungry, let's go back and have some snacks. He looked at me, a flicker of understanding laughter deep in his eyes, and shook his head helplessly. All right, let's go back and have some snacks. At 1001 hashtag. Commander Sun's removal was just a small reflection of the power reshuffling within the palace. With swift and decisive measures, Payin used the pretext of investigating the remnants of the Lu faction to replace key positions in the palace with trusted individuals. The court was gradually being streamlined and brought under his control. The old emperor's health was deteriorating day by day, and he spent most of his time bedridden. The affairs of the court were almost entirely handed over to Payin to manage. I still spent my days in the palace idling around, but under the cover of my foolishness, I secretly caught wind of many subtle movements and whispers. For example, a eunuch from a certain consort's palace always likes to run toward the cold palace at night. For example, the supervisor in charge of the imperial pharmacy has recently been in close contact with a spice shop outside the palace. I would tell Payin these scattered pieces of information as interesting anecdotes at night. He never pressed for details, just listened quietly, occasionally nodding thoughtfully. I knew that these seemingly useless pieces of information, when pieced together and analyzed by him, might become crucial clues. Until that night, behind the rockery in the imperial garden, I happened upon a young palace maid secretly throwing something into an abandoned well, pretending to be attracted by a firefly. I skipped away, but out of the corner of my eye, I saw that what she had thrown down were several packets of medicinal dregs. I memorized the location of the well and the appearance of that young maid. After returning, I told Payin. He sent Moying to dredge it up overnight, and sure enough, they retrieved some unusual medicinal residues. After examination by the imperial physician, it was discovered that a few of those herbs, when used alone, were harmless. But if combined with a certain ingredient in the old emperor's daily elixir, they would form a slow-acting poison that corrodes the heart and lungs. Following the clues, they quickly traced back to the person behind it all. It turned out to be the usually devout and reclusive virtuous consorta, who spent her days chanting Buddhist scriptures and avoiding worldly affairs. Her maternal family was related by marriage to Imperial Uncle Lu. When the Lu family fell from power, her own family also lost influence, which filled her with resentment. Driven by hatred, she attempted to poison the emperor, create chaos, and install a member of the imperial clan close to her on the throne. Once this matter came to light, the entire palace was thrown into shock. Payin dealt with virtuous consorta and her followers with an iron fist, thoroughly cleansing the imperial court. After this incident, the old emperor trusted Payin even more, even entrusting him with half of the tiger tally used to mobilize the imperial guards. On the night when the dust settled, Payin came to my window, under the moonlight as clear as water. He looked at me with a complicated expression and said, "Peony, once again, it's all thanks to you." I was lowering my head, peeling a pine nut candy, and upon hearing this, I looked up and smiled, saying, "I just happened to see it, that's all." I handed the peeled candy to his lips. "Try it, freshly imported pine nuts, very fragrant." He opened his mouth to take the candy, his fingertips lightly brushing past my lips. "Your Majesty, time is running out," he suddenly whispered in a low voice. My movements paused. "He summoned me today and said, the Crown Prince is young and needs someone to assist in governance." He looked at me, his gaze as profound as the sea. "He hopes that I, when necessary, can emulate the ancient examples of Huiguang and the Duke of Zhou." Huiguang carried out the deposition and installation of emperors, while the Duke of Zhou assisted King Qing in acting as regent. This is entrusting the entire state and its future to him. I held his hand. His palm was calloused yet exceptionally warm. "Do as you wish," I said clearly, looking into his eyes. "Whether you are the heir of the Marquis of Dingen, the head of the Surveillance Bureau, or the future regent, You are my Pei-yen, I will stay with you. He gazed at me for a long time, then suddenly pulled me into a tight embrace. His arms held me so firmly, as if he wanted to press me into his very bones and blood. When the crown prince is capable of handling affairs independently, I will resign from all official positions, he whispered in my ear. I will take you to Jiangnan, to see the apricot blossoms and misty rain you've always wanted to see. We'll find a quiet place, just the two of us. Leaning against his chest, listening to his steady heartbeat, I gently nodded. All right. Outside the window, the moonlight was just right, stretching their close-knit shadows long. Within the palace walls, the turmoil had temporarily subsided, and the road that belongs to us is still very long. That's all for today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions, feel free to leave a comment below. See you in the next video.